Hi poetry lovers, welcome to my channel Bella Poetry. My name is Bella and I love beautiful poetry. In today's segment we will discuss the life and the poetry of another famous English-British novelist and poet of the 19th century, Mary Shelley. Mary Shelley was born Mary Godwin in 1797 in Summertown, London. Her father's name was William Godwin. He was a political writer, a journalist, and a philosopher. Her mother, Mary Wollstonecraft, was a feminist writer. Before she met William Godwin, she had a few relationships, and she had an illegitimate daughter whose name was Fanny Imlay. When William married Mary Wollstonecraft, he adopted Fanny and gave her his last name, which was very honorable. So sometime later, Mary Godwin was born, but Mary Wollstonecraft, her mother, passed away 11 days after her birth from the infection of the reproductive organs, and William was left to take care of the two girls. In 1801, he married another woman whose name was Mary Claremont, and she brought two more children. She had two children, Charles and Claire, that joined the family. And Mary was very intelligent, sophisticated woman, but William's friends did not like her. They wrote about her that she was very quarrelsome and not very nice. Mary Godwin also didn't like her stepmother. She claimed that her stepmother favored her own children over her and Fanny. But anyways, they got married in 1801, and William and Mary were quite happy. They had a very, very good marriage. They started their own publishing firm. Unfortunately, in 1809, the firm started to fail, and William, who was constantly in debt, was saved from imprisonment by his loyal fan, Francis Place, who paid the creditors and saved him from jail. William and Mary Claremont were very dedicated to educating their children. They homeschooled them. Mary Godwin had a governess and a tutor, and her father schooled her in many different subjects. By the age of 15, Mary was a very smart, intelligent girl. Her father wrote about her. Her desire of knowledge is great, and her perseverance in everything she undertakes is almost invincible. And that actually remained true for the rest of Mary's life. Just because of her perseverance, she managed to go through life that presented a lot of challenges to her. In June 1812, Mary her father decided to send her to spend summer with the friends of his. The guy's name was William Baxter. He was the head of the dissenting family. There were 4 daughters there. He was also a radical like William Godwin, and Mary actually had a wonderful time there. She got along with the girls, and she had so much fun that in 1813 she returned to Scotland, where they lived, and spent 10 more months with them. In 1814, Mary Godwin returned home to London, and she met Percy Shelley. Percy Shelley came from an aristocratic family. His family was very wealthy. He was a philosopher and a poet, and he also held very radical views, just like William Godwin. He loved and he was inspired by William's book, Political Justice. They spent many hours conversing about politics and literature. Although Percy Shelley came from a wealthy family, he was always in debt because his parents refused to give him any money because they didn't want him to spend the money on poor people or giving his money to different social causes. So he basically always had a very difficult financial situation. He was also married. He was only 21 years old, but he was already married. His wife's name was Harriet, and he had a child. So at that time, Mary Shelley came home, they met each other, and they fell deeply in love. Mary Shelley was 16, and as I said, he was 21. So they met in secret because Percy Shelley was married. They met in secret at Mary's mother's grave at the cemetery. And Mary professed her deep love for Percy. She was actually the first one to say that. She wrote later that she was attracted to his intelligent, wild, unearthly looks. She called him her body and soul. And this amazing love affair ended with Percy Shelley taking her virginity. Obviously, the father, William Godwin, Mary's father, was very disappointed in Mary. He was disappointed in Percy. Although he considered himself a liberal, this was his daughter, and he felt that Percy Shelley dishonored her and his whole family. So the couple in 1814 secretly eloped and escaped to Paris. They took with them their sister, her stepsister Claire, and they traveled through Switzerland on donkeys, on horses, and to Paris. They had no money, and after a couple of months they went back to London and they moved in together. Now this interesting trio, Mary Shelley, Percy Shelley, and Claire, spent quite a few years together. The relationship was not normal in a way, because Percy Shelley, although he was married, didn't believe in marriage institution. He believed in communal love. Mary Shelley was still extremely young. She was 17. She found out that she was pregnant at that time, and Percy Shelley was having an affair with Claire, to great dissatisfaction and unhappiness of Mary. Mary was obviously jealous, so Percy Shelley decided that he's gonna divert her attention by bringing his friend Thomas Hogg to the house. He introduced her to Mary Shelley. He started writing love notes to Mary Shelley. Mary Shelley was pretty confused, but she kind of reciprocated because she didn't get any attention from Percy. But slowly this affair kind of fizzled out as well. But Mary Shelley, Percy Shelley, and Claire continued to live together. Now, on October 22nd, 1815, Mary gave birth to her first child, a daughter who was premature, and she passed away a few months later. Mary was heartbroken. She couldn't sleep at night. She had visions of her daughter coming back to life. And the only thing that actually kind of saved her was the fact that she got pregnant soon after. And on January 26, 1816, she gives birth to her son, William, who they affectionately call Wilmouse. And so then, in May 1816, Mary Shelley, Percy Shelley, Claire Claremont, and Mary's son, little son at that time, William Wilmouse, all traveled to Geneva to visit Lord Byron in his beautiful villa by the lake. There were some other people. They were sitting by the fire one night. It was raining outside, and they decided to write ghost stories. At night, Mary had a dream, a nightmare of a dead man coming to life, and that was the inspiration for her story Frankenstein, which later became a full novel, and she published it in 1818, but she was only 20 years old when she wrote the story, which was a great achievement. The same year, some very unexpected and tragic thing happened. On October 1816, Fanny Imlay, who was the half-sister of Mary Shelley, wrote a note to Mary saying that she was very upset, that something was going on in her life. She didn't know exactly, Mary didn't know what it was. Percy Shelley ran to the side of Fanny Imlay and found her dead. She committed suicide by overdosing on opium. And literally 2 months later, on December 10th, Harriet, Percy's wife, committed suicide as well by drowning in Serpentine River in Hyde's Park in London. And the reason she did it is because, first of all, she was deserted by Percy. She was pregnant with another man's child. She had 2 children with Percy that she needed to take care, and she probably was totally overwhelmed by her situation. And so she committed suicide. Of course, everybody was very upset by what happened, but Percy had to step in and take care of his children in order to be able to be a parent to his children. He had to marry Mary Shelley. So they got married, but it didn't help. The court found him an unfit parent because of the fact that he had no finances. They didn't like his lifestyle. He was a radical poet, and so they refused to give the children to him, and they gave the kids to Harriet's parents, and they raised them. So on September 2nd, 1817, Mary gives birth to her 3rd child. One passed away, then she had William, and now she gave birth to her 3rd child, a daughter, whom she made Clara. And on March 12, 1818, Mary Shelley, Percy Shelley, the 2 children, and Claire go to Italy. The reason they moved to Italy is because they were haunted by creditors. Percy Shelley was constantly in debt. Many times he wouldn't come home because the creditors would knock on the door at any hour of the day. So they decided to basically escape. And so they went to Italy. In Italy, they moved back and forth from one place to another, Naples, Rome, Venice, and so forth. And 2 terribly tragic things happened. In September 1818, Mary's daughter Clara passed away from malaria, and following that, like almost a year later, in June 1819, William, her son, passed away as well. So Mary not only lost her half-sister, but after that she lost her 2 children as well. So far she lost 3 children to early death. And on November 12, 1819, she gave birth to her last, 4th, and the only surviving son, Percy Florence. The birth of Percy Florence actually saved her. She was deeply depressed by the death of her children, obviously. and she was in a terrible mental state. So the good thing was that she was pregnant and gave birth to her fourth child. At the same time, she stayed very prolific. She wrote a lot. She wrote novels. And then again, on June 1822, Mary got pregnant again, but she miscarried. She was bleeding profusely, and she almost lost her life. What saved her was Percy actually putting her in an icy cold water, and that stopped the bleeding and saved her life. Because at that time, they stayed in some ancient villa, very old villa, and that action by Percy saved Mary Shelley's life. But the following month, another tragedy struck. Percy Shelley died in a boating accident, and he was cremated and buried on the beach where the villa was, where they stayed. And so Mary was devastated. She lost, in Italy, she lost her 2 children to malaria, she lost her husband, and she miscarried. One thing after another, after another. A year later, Mary Shelley and her son decide to move back to England. She moves in with her father and her stepmother, Mary Claremont, and after a while she receives a little money. She was writing essays and articles for different magazines, and she moved into her own apartment. In the years to come, Mary Shelley was very prolific. She wrote 8 novels. She wrote many short essays for different magazines, and she also edited the works, the poetry of her beloved husband Percy Shelley, and she also wrote her own poetry, mainly focused on her love and her longing for her husband. In 1948, Percy Florence, her son, married a woman by the name of Jane Gibson, and Mary got along with her very well, so she moved in with the couple. But unfortunately, about that time, a little bit earlier, she started having terrible headaches and bouts with paralysis all over her body. And on February 1st, 1851, Mary Shelley passed away from brain tumor. Very tragic, sad life, and at the same time inspiring life, because in spite of everything that happened to her and dying at the age of 53, she left behind her beautiful novels, poetry, and poetry of her husband that she edited and published as well. I wanted to read to you 2 of Mary Shelley's quotes. The first one: "I do not wish women to have power over men, but I want them to have power over themselves." And the second quote: "One never notices what has been done. One can only see what remains to be done." And she probably this is how she describes herself, that she always thought, what else can I do? What else can I write? Very ambitious and motivated to create. And we will read 2 of her poems. The first one was obviously dedicated to her husband, Percy Shelley. "My song is meant for thee alone. My thought imparts its melody and gives the soft, impassioned tone. I sing of joy and see thy smile that to the swelling note replies. I sing of love and feel the while the gaze of thy love-beaming eyes. If thou wert far, my voice would die in murmurs faint and sorrowing. If thou were vague In agony, my heart would break. I couldn't sing. Then listen while I sing to thee. My song is meant for thee alone. And now that thou art near to me, I pour a full, impassioned tone. Beautiful poem. And then the second one is called La Vida es Sueño. Life is a dream. The tide of time was at my feet, flowing with calm and equal motion. With gladdened heart my eyes might greet the coming of the sunlit ocean, till at its full a fatal storm wrapped in grim shade the mighty form, then backward rolled the ebb of time, while I with eager steps pursue. And though the hour had lost its prime, still as the dim beach wider grew, I passed along the utmost verge of the inconstant fleeting surge. Back and more back the waters rolled, and faster yet the waves receding may now, alas, my hopes grow cold, as I, the vacant prospect heeding, gaze on the bleak and desert strand, as sad I pace the barren sand. Beautiful poetry, and it brings us to the end of this segment. In our next segment, we will discuss the life and the poetry of an American poet, African American poet, Francis Harper. Please join us. And I would like to thank you for listening to this segment. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel so that we can bring you more Bella poetry in the future. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye-bye.